Okay, welcome to the very first Drinking with Authors episode. My name's Joshua Palmatier. I'm a fantasy writer with Daw Books, and today I'm here to chat with Gerald Brandt about his latest book, Threader Origins. Okay, and we're going to talk about writing, we're going to talk about what we're drinking tonight, and of course we're going to talk about the book. So I guess I will let Gerald introduce himself in a little more detail than that, and then we will talk about what we are drinking tonight. So go ahead, Gerald.
All right, I'm Gerald Brandt. I'm a science fiction writer with Daw Books. My fourth novel from Daw came out in January. You saw the cover. And I'm currently writing the third in the same series. The second is already handed in, just needs a little bit more looking at by my lovely editor, Sheila. And then I go on to the next project.
And what was your first series?
Oh, the first series was the San Angeles series. It was The Courier, The Operative, and The Rebel. I have to try to remember that because it was my brain can only hold so much. And those came out, I guess, 2016, I guess the first one came out. 2016, 17, and 18, and then this one's come out in 21. So
I read all of those first three and really enjoyed those. And
thank you.
Looking forward to Threader Origins. A, because, well, it's written by you, and B, because apparently it involves some kind of quantum mechanics and stuff. And I, of course, am a mathematician, so I'm quasi interested in that as well. I've actually bought 3 or 4 quantum physics books because I intend to actually start delving into it a little bit. I will say that I have started Threader Origins, but I'm only like, I don't know, 75 pages into it so far. So I can't say a whole lot about the Threader Origins just yet, but that's why you're here.
Yeah.
So you can talk about Threader Origins.
If you're expecting hard science fiction with quantum theories and quantum strings, you're gonna be disappointed. It's not hard science fiction. I did buy many books on string theory and quantum physics and the whole thing, and after reading them and studying them, yeah, I kind of realized I'm not smart enough to understand it all. So I actually, I don't know where a copy is right now, but there's a book called The Dancing Woolly Masters, which was put out in the 70s or 80s, I guess. And it tries to tie together Asian religions and influences in with quantum physics and string theory. And I used that more than I used anything that was a hard science. So I actually have a friend who I was going through the book and highlighting sections. And he picked it up off my desk and flipped through it. And he said, "You've only highlighted all the emotional stuff, none of the science stuff." Yeah, that's about right.
And that's about right for Daw too, honestly, because Daw likes the characters.
That's right.
Editors are a lot more interested in the character arcs and the characters in the stories than they are in much of anything else. But before we get too deep into this, though, let's start with what we're drinking tonight. So,
all right, I have a. Can you see it? There it is.
Yeah.
A blood orange Boulevardier. It's a playoff Negroni. It's got 1 ounce of bourbon, 1 ounce of sweet vermouth, 1 ounce of Campari, 1 ounce of freshly squeezed blood orange, a blood orange slice, and then it's stirred with ice until it gets cold. And it's absolutely delicious.
Stirred, not shaken.
Stirred, yes.
So you're not James Bond, in other words.
Not for that. No, I have another drink in the queue, and that one's been shaken.
Okay, well, if we get to that, then you can tell us all about that drink when we're there. I'm not drinking anything that complex. I just have some bourbon whiskey here.
Well, at least we both have bourbon.
Yes, straight up bourbon. Yep. So we'll see. Our last conversation on Zoom, I had way too much. So we'll see how far it goes tonight.
All right.
Okay, so hopefully everybody jotted down that recipe and are making their own drinks as we speak. Let's move on to a little bit more about threader origins. So I'm going to ask the age-old question that all writers hate. Where did the story come from? Where did the idea come from for origins?
Yeah, my stories always start with a character. So I had my main character Darwin in my head first, and I kind of knew his background and his family life and things like that, but I didn't actually have a world to put him in, and so he was kind of sitting there. I guess he was sitting there before I even wrote The Courier, as something I wanted to do, and then I think in between The Courier and The Operative, I was reading the newspaper, and there was an article about some quantum string something going on. I don't know, some new findings. Like it was, this would have been back in 2015. So my memory of it isn't that great. Too many of these. But I can't remember exactly what the article was about. But as soon as I read it, this idea popped into my head of having a magic system based off of quantum strings. And I kind of put Darwin and this together, and I knew I wanted an alternate world, or a portal fantasy as they called it. And I started writing this fantasy novel. And I finished it, and I gave it to Sheila, and Sheila said, "It's not fantasy, it's science fiction." And then she bought it. So
If you bought it, that's the important thing.
That is the very important thing, yes. So yeah, I wrote the whole thing as fantasy with a full magic system with its pluses and minuses. And she said, "No, it's science fiction." So I went back and I layered a little bit more science into it, but really didn't change the story at all.
Okay, I was going to ask you, when she said it was science fiction, did she ask you to rewrite it, revise it in that vein? So you did have to go back and make some changes.
I did. And those ones I did without her editorial comments yet, right? She bought it, but didn't want to do editorial comments until I'd made it a little bit more sciencey.
Okay, and so this begs the question then, since we know that it's at least quasi based on quantum mechanics, had you done quantum mechanic research before that first draft, or did you do the research after Sheila suggested it was sci-fi and you felt like...
I did it before. I did it as I was writing it as the fantasy.
Okay.
So yeah, because I was like, the magic system was based off of, very loosely off of, quantum strings. So I figured I'd better have some sort of background. You won't find any of it in the book though, because like I say, I'm not that smart.
Well, I like I said, I've read 50, 75 pages, something like that, and I haven't seen an equation yet. So
I think one of my characters might say 2 + 2 at one point. Comes up with the wrong answer though.
So I shouldn't expect to see like any tensor products or anything like that.
No.
No?
No.
Aw.
Sorry.
You're disappointing the mathematician in me.
Yeah, I very much enjoy reading hard science fiction, but I really don't like writing hard science fiction. So I don't think you'll ever see me do anything that's really hard science fiction.
Even though I'm a mathematician, I would probably say the same thing myself. Even though the current series that I'm working on for DAW is based off of a mathematical structure. I think you probably ran into the same problem that I ran into, even if you had used more or wanted to use more of the quantum mechanics in it. It just doesn't work it's really hard to make it work in a novel. Because the novel, especially a DAW novel, because the novel's supposed to be about the characters, so you don't want to stop and take a whole chapter and talk about quantum mechanics or
that's right.
A mathematical structure. It just doesn't work. So yeah, I totally understand that. What was it about the quantum mechanics though that made you think magic system?
And again, the click was made like back in 2015 or 2014, something around that time frame. And I can't remember, it was something that was in that article that was worded, you know, if I kept the article, which really I should have, you know, to put it into my archives, because when I'm dead, people won't want to read it. But, you know, I should have kept the article, but I didn't. But there's something in there, some twist of phrase or something about you know, multiple worlds and quantum strings and quantum theory and stuff. I can't remember, but there's some twist in there that just made me kind of go, oh, what if a few people could manipulate the quantum strings and not necessarily change reality, but, you know, be able to maybe look a distance in the future, or be able to teleport themselves by, you know, just stepping through a quantum hole or something and getting to the other side. Right. So I kind of just started, something just twigged, and I started thinking about these nifty things, and that was it. I knew the world.
Yeah, because you, in the part that I have read, you've been talking about probabilities and all of that. And I mean, I've started to see what I'm assuming you're talking about when you mention the strings and all that kind of stuff. I guess you're not calling them strings in the novel, you're calling them threads, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Or origin as a title. So I'm starting to see a little bit of that. And so it sounds like what really kind of clicked with the quantum stuff in this article was the idea that there are different worlds. And like you said, you already had it in your head. You wanted this to be like a Portal fantasy. So the whole Portal, different worlds, all that kind of stuff is what clicked.
Yep, exactly. Yeah.
Okay, and that's cool. So I know you've mentioned this in social media a couple times. You know, the first book is out. You said that you're writing, you are writing book 3, but you're also still working on book 2. You mentioned on social media that it's the first time you've been able to really, while writing book 3, had the chance to make changes to like earlier books, like book 2 in this case.
Yeah.
So what's the advantage there?
Well, yeah, and it's new for me because you know, it only happened on this Threader series. I guess Sheila bought Threader Origins in 2019, and of course it didn't come. And at that point, it was, as far as I was concerned, it was a complete book at that point, right? So it didn't come out till 2021. So there's a year in between where I started writing book 2. And because book 1 hadn't gone to print, or hadn't necessarily gone through its second round of editorial comments by Sheila, I got, you know, if you know, when you write a series or a trilogy, you lay out your rules in your first book and your world, and then you write your second book and you say, oh, you know, I really wish that I wouldn't have done that in first book, because here I could do this, and it would just add the level of complexity. So I had the opportunity to say, okay, well, I didn't do that in the first book. And I scribbled it out and rewrote it in the first book. So, you know, I got to be able to change my world, my base world in book 1 to match things that I wanted to do in book 2. And I also got to change some plot points so that I could there's things that I wanted to happen in book 1 that needed a little bit more or in book 2 that needed a bit more grounding in book 1. So when I wrote it in book 2, and I said, okay, well, where can I put this in? Where can I put in my little trail? So when they see this in book 2, they don't just kind of go, I never saw that coming. They'll actually, excuse me, actually look and say, oh yeah, I can see where that came from. So I got to do a lot of that. And I'm doing the same thing now, doing books 3 and book 2. So it's actually really cool. Because I didn't have that opportunity, of course, with the San Angeles series, because they came out fairly quickly, and some of my timelines on them were a bit short. So I wrote them without being able to change any backstory in the previous books, and having the opportunity to do that just creates I think it creates a richer world. It creates a more complex timeline and plot that ties the books together a little bit better. I think it works really well. I got lucky.
Well, I'm looking at the same thing because my next book with Daw doesn't come out until August 2022. And right now I'm looking at having book 2 and book 3 finished this year. So I'll have the plan is anyway that I'll have the whole series written before the first book comes out. So I'm planning on doing what you suggested, and when I need to, going back to book 1 and saying, okay, let's scratch this and move this and that on this. And I've never been able to do that before with any of my previous series with Dawes. So
I think you'll like it. And the nice thing is, because Dawes already bought the 3 books or the trilogy or the series or whatever, you know, it's not like we're doing all this work, not sure if we're going to sell it. We already know that we've sold these books, so we can actually go back and do it without thinking we might be wasting time on doing all our work, right?
Yeah.
Book 3 for the Quantum Empirica was actually supposed to be in before book 1 was available as well. The timeline was that all 3 books were in before book 1 came out, but this whole pandemic thing kind of took the wind out of my sails for a year. So the book 3 is currently a lot behind schedule. Still plenty of time for publication date, right? It's not coming out until January 2023.
Yeah.
Right. So I mean, I still got a ton of time on it. It's not like I'm delaying the production of the book at all. But
so, but
the pandemic hurt.
Expecting book 2 in January 2021. No, January 2020, and then book 3 a year later. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And what's book 2 and book 3? Do you have titles?
I do. Book 2 is called Threat or War, and book 3 is called Threat or God.
Ooh.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, you went from origins to war immediately. It's like big.
Darn tune. You know. Raise those stakes as fast as you can.
Yeah, I mean, most trilogies I know of, Threat or War would be the last book. You know, book 1 would be leading up to, and then book 3 would be here, all out war. But no, you're going right for it in book 2.
Yeah. I mean, all 3 books have a war in them, but book 2, it's really, that's what the book is about this big war. Even book 3 has a battle or 2 in it. So.
Well, yeah, I think most books have battles in them.
Yeah.
I'm currently trying to finish off book 2. I mean, I call it a battle, but it's really an escape. You know, it's like there's not going to be the huge battle that there was at the end of book 1, but technically it's a battle. It's just the goal is to escape this time.
Without giving it away, book 1 ends on a battle. Book 2 ends in a battle, and book 3 ends in a battle. So
yeah.
Well,
I mean, that's especially if you're thinking in terms of fantasy as opposed to science fiction. That's usually what happens in fantasy is the book leads up to some kind of battle.
Yeah.
For a loose connotation of battle, sometimes it has a different meaning. But anyway, let's get back to Threat or Origins. So usually there is something unique about the world in most like fantasy and science fiction things. It's the unique thing that draws people in. So would you say the unique thing is your threads here? And do you want to expand on that a little bit more?
Yeah, I don't want to give away too many plot points, but yeah, I'd say there's two unique things, I guess. One is it's the world he goes to. Okay. Yeah, well, I think I can do this. Okay.
It's a portal fantasy, so we know he jumps worlds.
He jumps worlds, yeah. The world that he is currently in, our world, is as we know it, right? It's current times, everything is normal. And him and his dad turn on the quantum machine that pulls him across to the worlds. When he's pulled across, he gets moved into a world where the exact same thing happened. The machine got turned on, but it happened 5 years previous. So he goes into a world at the exact same time and date, but they've already been in a world where this machine has been turned on for 5 years. So there's there's people who can see threads, there's people who can't see threads, and people who can't see threads hate the people that can. right? Or used to, and there's wars and there's destruction, and so I mean there's no cars, there's no massive sailing vessels, right? There's no oil moving from one country to another. There's no goods. Everything is very, very cliquish. You know, things have kind of gone down to you know, this is my town, and I really don't know too much more than this town, right? And you know, and they're scattered around. New Jersey plays a big part. San Diego plays a huge part. So I go all over the country, but it's really, people have gone the way they were in the old days, right? It's you don't have the transportation, you don't have the airplanes and the cars or whatever. You kind of just have your community, and the book has a lot of individual communities that get pulled into various things. So that's one of them. And the second thing is, of course, the threads. That's huge.
Yeah, I was going to say that. So the two things are the threads, and then this different society without the technology and the culture and stuff.
Yeah, it's almost a post-apocalyptic world.
Yeah, the part that I've read, that's how it's coming across.
Yeah.
It's kind of post-apocalyptic. I don't think I'm spoiling anything by saying, you know, like the coffee tastes different and the food tastes different and all that kind of stuff. And you know, you realize that well, I realized, but the point of that was that, you know, if we don't have trade, you're not going to get salt and pepper and you know, beans from Colombia, and you know.
That's right. Yeah.
So
yeah.
Yeah, that's there. I can see that already.
Yeah, and the post-apocalyptic stuff that I put in, it really wasn't. There wasn't a lot of it in book one, but when I started doing book two, I needed to bring in a lot. You know, I do need to do more world building, bring in a lot more backstory, and that's where I realized that, yeah, this kind of stuff was going to happen, and that's where I got to go back to book one and put those, you know, those storylines in there, so that you could see it in book one, and when it came out full force in book two, it wasn't so unexpected anymore.
Yeah, and that's cool. Actually, it's a good turning point to kind of start talking a little bit more about writing in general, because, like, as a writer, I'm like a total pantser. You know, I might jot down you know, a synopsis or something like that in order to sell a book, like before I've written it or something. Or in the case of the series that I just sold, I had the first book written already, but I, you know, threw together some synopses for book 2 and 3 so that the publishers knew where it was headed. But in general, like when I sit down to write, I don't refer to a synopsis. I don't have an outline. I just, in my head, I kind of have a couple of like scenes where I think it's going to head. But even that's not a guarantee. So I just kind of have this very, very, really rough idea of what I think the story is. And then I just kind of sit down and start writing. So that's my process. What is your process?
Before I start anything, I definitely have a character. I brought this up already. I always have my main character fairly well developed in my head before I start anything. And I usually have a fair idea of what the world's going to be. And I know where I want, if I'm doing, in this case, a trilogy, I know where I want book 1 to end. I know where I want book 2 to end, and I know how I want book 3 to end. So that's where I start. And then I you can't see it, it's off screen. I have a stack this big of Post-it notes, and I'll go to my big whiteboard and I'll write down, you know, sometimes it's a sentence, sometimes it's one word, sometimes it's an emotion, and I'll start putting these on the board where one Post-it note is one scene. So I'll write out about 100 Post-it notes for one book, and I'll rearrange them. And I might put in a few more details on the Post-it notes until I look at my whiteboard and I say, I have a complete story. In the case of San Angeles, where I had multiple point of view characters, I use a different color Post-it note per point of view character. So I can take one glance at my board and say, well, geez, I got 4 scenes in a row from the same point of view. Well, I can't do that, right? And I start rearranging. Once I'm happy with that, I usually end up with about 72 to 80 Post-it notes left on my board, which for me turns into about 100,000 word novel. So I'll take those Post-it notes and I will put that one line or that one emotion or whatever into a spreadsheet, color coded to match the Post-it notes. And then I'll start adding detail. I'll add where it takes place. I'll add who's in the scene. I'll add, descriptions and more emotional depth of what I want. And in the case of the San Angeles series, I add date and timestamps to every scene, which I wouldn't recommend doing. That's a headache. I ended up doing, for the San Angeles series, I ended up building a massive Gantt chart just so I knew where each character was doing what and when, so that the storylines wouldn't come out of sequence. So, but anyways, I end up with this massive spreadsheet that has every scene from the front of the book to the end of the book. And then I will take just the detailed description from that, and I'll put it into my document as a header. And then I'll start from the beginning, scene 1, and I'll write all the way down through the book sequentially. Usually when I hit the halfway point, because writing is organic. As a pantser, you know that. These ideas come up and you're going, oh yeah, and this character suddenly takes on more value than what you thought he would, right? So about the halfway point, I look at my plot, I look at my spreadsheet, and I say, okay, yeah, it doesn't quite fit it anymore. I still want to hit these points. And I'll start maybe either rearranging scenes, or I'll take out a scene and put in a new one, and until I'm happy again, and then I'll write the second half of the book. And I never go back. I don't, if I'm writing scene 25 and I think, oh, I need to put this into scene 2, I'll go back up and I'll just jot a note and I'll go back. I'll never rewrite anything until I have the first draft. I'm a big believer in you can't revise what you don't have. So I want to have the entire novel first. And usually I end up with 75,000 words in my first draft. And then I do what sometimes feels like 25 million revisions.
I know that feeling.
Yeah, and then I'm done. And I actually have a list as well. I have a very specific set of flaws that my beta readers have told me about. So I actually have a list, and I actually have revision passes where I go, okay, I have to do this. And I'll go through every scene and for that one item and go, okay, no, I'm good. Oh, no, made a mistake. And I'll go through that list. And so the list is 10 long. That's 10 passes, 10 revision passes right there.
You can't like check all 10 of them all at the same time in one pass?
I think we covered how I'm not so smart when we started. So the problem is that if I might be able to do 2 or 3 at once, but if I try to do all 10, I know I'm going to miss it, right? Yeah. Because I'm a computer programmer. I was trained as a computer programmer. I don't do it anymore. I do IT stuff, but it's, you laser focus on the one problem and you solve that one issue, and then you go to the next. In this case, the one issue might cover the whole book. It's spotted all the way throughout, but I like to solve the one issue first before I go on to the next one.
Yeah, and I'm just joking. I mean, that's your process. That's what works for you. And I think that's the key thing that most writers don't understand, is they just got to what process works best for them. I mean, like I said, like what you do with the Post-it notes and then the whole spreadsheet and everything, I would go nuts. I mean, that I would not be able to handle that. I mean, I literally sit down and, while I'm writing a chapter, while I'm writing, I might say, oh, I think this is where this is headed. And I'll jot myself a little note at the end of the chapter. And then, if I don't get to it in that chapter, then it gets bumped into the next chapter as a note and whatnot. So I have minor little notes. I usually only have like, maximum of 3 or 4 of these kind of notes kind of getting bumped as I move along and whatnot. But I also want to emphasize what you said earlier, because I do the same thing. I never go back and change something. If I know something earlier in the book is now wrong or is not, I don't go back to that chapter and leave myself a note. I have a list of notes that get bumped along on each chapter of things that I want to change in the revision. And I want to say that I agree that it's not wrong to go back and change things the minute you know that you think it needs to be changed. I don't think it's efficient though, because like you said, you need to know where the book is going to end. And so you need to know the whole book before you can decide whether that thing you think needs to be changed actually needs to be changed, or how it needs to be changed.
Right. And for you, that makes sense because you're a pantser. You don't know where you're going. I already know where I'm going. Right. But I still
but you also said that along the way things change. So.
Of course they do. Yeah, they have to, because your imagination starts kicking in, right? And yeah, things change dramatically. I was talking to another writer, and they do something similar. They don't go through the spreadsheets and everything else, but they have the everything basically plotted out. But when as they're writing, they'll write scene 1 and they'll go to 2 and they'll go, oh, okay, well, in order for this to work, I need to change scene 1. They'll go back and do scene 1, and then they'll go to 2 and 3. So by the time that they've hit, say, the middle of the book, they've revised, scenes 1 through 10 30 times already.
Yeah.
Right. But then they keep going and keep going. By the time they get to the end of the book, they know exactly what they want. And there's no revision. It's perfect.
Yeah.
Right through. Right. So yeah. Do I think it's inefficient? I think so. But you asked me on a bad day, and I think my system's pretty inefficient as well. So
I don't think there's really a good efficient system for writing a novel. You just, like I said, you just got to find what works best for you and do it. Like I've tried the outline. I've never tried a spreadsheet and post-it notes and stuff, but I've tried to like outline, like chapters, because I know like Patricia Bray, she usually says chapter 1 and she has notes about what happens in chapter 1 and then chapter 2 and does sort of an outline in that way. And then like she might get to chapter 5 and realize the outline doesn't work anymore, and so she goes back and adjusts the outline and whatnot. But it's just whatever helps you organize things in your head.
Yeah. If you're a beginning writer and somebody's trying to sell you the method to write a book, and this is the way it's done and this is the way it has to be done, run away as fast as you can, because it's different for everybody. You can listen to them and you can say, ooh, I like that, and pick it out and put it into your method, or you like that and put it into your method. But don't listen to anybody that says this is the way a book has to be written and that's it.
Yeah,
because it's different for everybody. Like you were saying that Patricia Bray writes out all her chapters in advance, so she knows what it is. I don't know what my chapters are until my book is actually 100% finished and gone through all the revision process. Then I'll go through and I'll go, oh, all right, there's a chapter break, and I'll go, oh, there's another. So I don't do chapter breaks until I'm done the book.
And I'm doing chapter breaks all along the way. I'm done with chapter 1. This is the end of chapter 1. I'm now on to chapter 2. It just, for me, I hit a spot where I'm like, okay, this feels like the end of the chapter, and that's how I know, quote unquote, know that that's the end of the chapter. And like I tried the outline. What happened was I wrote out the outline, and then when I sat down to write the book, I wasn't interested in the book anymore. It's like my imagination had already like played out the book, and so it was like all the creativity had drained out of it for me. And
okay,
I just learned that the outline doesn't work for me.
Yeah. Yeah, if it doesn't work, don't do it.
Yeah, exactly.
I found out I was an outliner when I wrote The Courier. I wrote The Courier as a NaNoWriMo novel, National Novel Writing Month, which is November, I believe. I wrote 65,000 words in 1 month, and I ended up with The Courier. And it was such, it was garbage. It took me 2 years to take what I'd written and actually turn it into something that was actually a novel instead of just, 65,000 words put onto the paper. So that's when I realized, and that plus deadlines from DAW Books made me realize I better know where I'm going. I spent too many sessions sitting at a keyboard with a blank screen going, I don't know what I'm doing next. I don't know what I'm doing next. Now I don't have that problem. I flip open the spreadsheet and say, I'm doing that. And whether it's garbage or whether it's really good, that is exactly what I'll write. Right?
Yeah.
Because the magic happens in the revision process. The first draft is always garbage.
Yeah, I'm where I'm writing right now. I'm kind of in that place where I'm looking at the screen going, I don't really know what happens next. All I know is that where I'm at and where I know I need to be by the end of this chapter, that I have to get to this spot. And I'm just, the last couple days of writing has been kind of rough because I'm writing, I got like 1,200 words and whatever. But it feels like I'm still like feeling out how I'm supposed to get from here to there. And I don't have a nice little spreadsheet that tells me that's supposed to happen with this character to get me to this spot.
Yeah. And the spreadsheet tells me what I need to write next. Right. So I can sit down and I can start writing right away. But, on a bad day, even though I know what I'm supposed to be writing, a bad day is still, 500 words. Yeah. And that's all I get. A good day, I'm doing 5,000 words in 2 hours. Yeah. There's a lot of bad days. Right.
I was just saying,
because you have it outlined.
If I got 5,000 words in 2 hours. Yeah. I think the most I've done in a day of writing, not 24-hour writing or anything, but in a couple hours of writing, I think is 3,500, and I thought that was spectacular.
My best is we there's a group of writers here in Winnipeg that get together and we do write-off weekends. So one of us will host, and everybody will come over, and we'll have food ready and all that stuff. All we do is sit and write. We're on the couch, we're at the kitchen table, or whatever, and then we break for lunch and we chat. And, if you're at a tough spot in the book, you can chat a little bit, but you're not supposed to disrupt the writing time too much. But on one of those, in one 8-hour session, I think I did just over 10,000 words a day.
I can't even imagine myself doing that.
Yeah, that's pretty rare for me. I mean, well, pretty rare. It's extremely rare for me. It's only happened to me twice, right, in my entire writing career, which goes beyond the 6 books that I've sold.
Yeah,
right? So it's a pretty rare thing. But when it flows, it can work.
Yeah, usually the scenes where I end up writing a lot of words really, really fast are like the battle scenes or something like that, because there's less, it's less emotion and more just mechanical movement kind of things going on. There's emotion there because emotion led up to the battle, and emotion tied in with it and whatnot. But yeah, there's a lot more actual like physical movements and things happening, and I can write that fast. It's when I'm really like delving deep into the characters and how and their motivations and how they're moving from one place to the next, or what gets them from one place to the next. That it seems to take me for much longer to write.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. The battle scenes go really fast. Dialogue, I tend to do, I can write fairly quickly. But yeah, I've got characters, say they're in San Francisco, and I've got to get them to San Diego. There's no planes and buses or cars. And, it's maybe half a scene to get them there. And that half a scene is just a struggle. It's brutal. It's just brutal. But
because you've gotta get them there believably.
Yeah.
And that's what the struggle is, because, you know, especially when it's emotion, because you got to get them to, you got to get your character to go through the emotion and then realize what they need to do as a consequence of it. And that's what moves them on.
Yeah. Yeah.
And making that shift believable, that's what's, in my opinion, that's one of the hardest things to write.
Yeah. And that's what I do in revision. In my first pass, I have some keywords in there, so I know what the emotional drive is supposed to be, but there's no depth to it. It's just get these words down and get them through here. And then in the revision process is when I start layering in the mental process and the physical, you know, manifestations of it and all. And that's where I start laying it all in as revision. In the first pass, I don't do description and I don't do emotional content in my first draft at all. It's just very, very superficial. The curtains were blue. Okay, done. That was it, right?
I believe Kate Elliott actually said said that once about description. She said that she doesn't, in the first draft, she doesn't worry about description, and
no.
she during the revision process, that's when she like layers in description and stuff like that.
Yeah. And that's why my first draft is 75,000, or in the case of Threat or Gods, my first draft now is 65,000 words, which is really small. But really, there's no description. There's no emotional depth to the story yet. You know, adding those 20, 25, 30,000 words is not going to be complex to do. It's not going to be difficult to add the wordage just to get the emotional and the you know, the descriptive content in there.
Yeah, yeah. See, I have that all, I don't do that in revisions and stuff. That's all pretty much in there in my first draft and whatever. So first draft, I'm usually fixing like structural plot things. You know, like I'll it's sort of what you talked about earlier, where you know, at the beginning of the book in chapter 5, you describe, you know, this character, and as far as you're concerned, it's a throwaway character. Then, you know, by chapter 8, you're suddenly realizing, you know, holy crap, the entire book, you know, is based off of this one character. If they don't do one thing, the entire thing falls apart, and suddenly, you know, so a lot of my revisions is going back and fixing things like that, saying, okay, I need the bridge to look like this so that this can happen in the later chapter, and, you know, things I just didn't realize I needed earlier on, I have to go back and add in, and a lot of that tends to be some world building stuff too. When I start, I have an idea of the magic system and how it works, but then as I'm writing it, I realize, oh wait, I need if I do that, then they're too powerful, so I need some consequences, or, you know, things like that, and so I have to go back and fix things like that in my revisions.
And normally in my revision, because like I say, I hit the halfway point and I relook at my plot to make sure it follows what I've written in the first half. I almost never change the plot in any of my revisions. You know, I have removed entire scenes in my revisions because they don't, you know, necessarily feed the book properly anymore, but the plot is pretty much set. And to me, the plot is just, you know, A to B to C to D, and it's not the story, right? It's the story is the characters. So the plot is just the mechanics of how to get from the beginning of the book to the end of the book. So once that's down, then I've just got to make sure that you know, the drive and the reasons and the emotional impact is in there.
Yeah, no, my plot evolves as I'm writing. Like I literally, the third book I wrote for Daw, I was writing, you know, the first 2 books were out, and I was like, okay, I got to get this third book. And I'm like trying to write it, and it was a horrible struggle, and I couldn't figure out why it was this horrible struggle. And eventually I realized that the plot that I had, where I thought it was going, was all wrong. And the minute I threw it out and just said, just write, everything worked. And it didn't feel wrong anymore. It didn't feel like I was, you know, fighting tooth and nail to get words on the page. It was, once I just let it go, that I think that was the moment, the real moment where I realized that, you know, I'm basically just a complete pantser.
Yeah, I think you've just basically described writer's block in you know, fairly clearly. If you can't write, then chances are something is wrong in what you've written before, right? Either your plot is wrong, or the reasons your character's doing something is wrong. It's not writing because you haven't stopped writing because you can't write anymore. It's because your brain is saying, no, the stuff I'm supposed to write now is wrong because of what happened earlier. It's so you've got to throw away some stuff, and you've got to throw away the inhibitions and go back and find out the real reason, and then the words will start coming again. Yeah. I don't think I think writer's block is basically your brain realizing you've done something wrong and you need to correct it before you move forward.
And that's never happened to you, right?
Every second Tuesday.
Yeah, whenever the words start coming hard, I start asking myself, okay, what is wrong? Like, what have I done that is wrong? And then that's usually the solution. Is it's not usually, you know, oh, I just don't feel like writing today. It's usually, no, there's something wrong, and I have to go back and figure out what that is. And thankfully, experience you start picking up on it a lot faster, and you don't have to go back 5 chapters. You only have to go back 2 scenes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And
so,
go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say, I think we should start winding this down. Did you get to your second drink?
I just picked up my second drink.
Okay.
Cheers.
So second drink.
So this is a espresso martini. Have you ever had iced Vietnamese coffee?
I have not. I'm not a coffee drinker though, so.
All right. Well, this tastes exactly like that, except it's got booze in it. That makes it better.
Yeah, I'm a tea, unfortunately. So.
Yeah, but that's delicious. So it's got 1 1/4 ounces of vodka, 1 ounce of hot espresso, 1/2 an ounce of simple syrup, and 1/4 ounce of coffee liqueur. You put it in a shaker. You shake it for a good long time. You know, not just 10 shakes and pour. You shake it for a good 5 minutes, and it gets a nice froth on top. And you pour that in the glass and you drink it. And it tastes like Vietnamese iced coffee, except that it's booze, which makes it, you know, 10 times better than Vietnamese iced coffee, which is already really, really, really delicious.
I was going to ask you about the froth on top because it's been sitting there the entire time we've been talking, and there's still froth.
It has. Yeah, half of it's gone, but espresso has a froth anyway.
Yeah,
right? As soon as you do espresso. Now, when you put it in the shaker and shake it with the ice, it seems to solidify it a little bit more, so it doesn't disappear as fast. And I actually put an ice cube in this one to try to keep it cold. It didn't quite work, but it's still good.
Did it water it down too much?
No, there's a lot of booze in here. It's a martini, right? So it's all booze, pretty much.
Basically all booze, yeah. Okay, so do you have, any parting advice for writers out there? Any specific advice that you would want to give writers?
You know, I think the specific advice I'm going to give is something that we've already covered. And that is, you can't revise what you haven't written. You know, whether it's a short story or it's a novel, finish it. Write the whole thing from front to back. Finish it. Even if it's not sequential, if you've got to hop, you know, all over, finish the short story, finish the novel. You can't fix what you haven't written. Write it. And then you can, all the magic happens when you're in revision. Make it perfect.
Yeah. And you have to have a finished novel to sell a novel. I mean,
true. Yeah.
Short story. I mean, you can't sell an unfinished short story or novel. You've got to have it finished.
Yep.
And so for the newbie writers out there. And once you've been published, you can sell things. Yeah, but that's a level you have to get to.
I'm not there yet.
And then so that's the writing thing. Now tell us about where we can find you online and where we can buy your books, and remind us again of the book, the new book that we need.
All right.
To buy right now.
You can find me online. I have a website at www.GeraldBrandtDrinkingWithAuthors. You can find me on Facebook at GeraldBrandtAuthor, and you can find me on Twitter at GeraldBrandt. And I also have an Instagram, which I've had for a long time, and I kind of put pictures up there, but I've started doing more stuff. Yeah, but I don't know how you get to me. But look for Gerald Brandt, look for the bald guy, the ugly looking bald guy, and you'll find me. So
yeah, I know you're on there because I saw something that you posted earlier today on Instagram.
There you go. I've learned to do automated posts. So I wanted a post to come out at 8 o'clock this morning on all 3 platforms. Instagram, I still have to do manually because I don't know how to do it. I figured out how to do, timed releases on Twitter. So I did all my work last night, and at 8 o'clock this morning, because I still have a full-time job, I was at work. Everything kind of went up on Twitter and Facebook, and it, looked like I was actually active on there. That's the story I tell my boss. I wasn't on Facebook, honest.
You weren't there. No, that wasn't you.
No.
That was your assistant.
What's that?
I said that was your assistant.
That was my assistant. Yeah, my assistant has 4 legs and is really hairy, so he barks a lot, But Threader Origins, it's out now. It's been out since January 12th, and it is available anywhere, right? You can go to Barnes & Noble and get it. If they don't have it in stock, they'll bring it in for you. You can go to Amazon. You can go, one of my favorites, go to your local independent bookseller and pick up the book there. If you want a signed copy, you can order from McNally Robinson in Winnipeg. They're on Facebook. Just do a search for McNally Robinson and you'll find them. And they will have signed copies. If they don't, they'll call me in and I'll sign it. If you want it personalized, they'll call me in and I'll personalize the book and they'll ship it to you signed and personalized.
Cool. Very cool. So thank you for chatting with me today and drinking with me today.
I feel I've had more to drink than you have.
I don't know. I finished my whiskey, so it's gone.
Okay.
Not as much as I had the other night, though. The other night, that
was a great night. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a little rough.
Well, thank you so much for having me. This was great. Had a great time.
Yes, and thank you for coming. And we will have to do it again for anything that comes out that you have coming out. You have to let me know. So short stories and all that good stuff coming up. So hopefully everybody enjoyed it, and everybody run out and buy Threader Origins by Gerald Brandt.
All right.
Okay, catch everybody later.